Hello, and welcome to the Assessment Alchemist, the podcast where we transform the daunting world of assessments into a journey of empowerment and achievement for educators and students alike. I'm Tina Wiles, your guide in this quest to conquer test anxiety and unlock the secrets of effective test preparation. In each episode, we'll mix the perfect blend of expert insights, practical strategies, and inspiring stories, all designed to help you turn test taking into a positive, enriching experience for your students. Whether you're a teacher, a school counselor, or an educational enthusiast, you're in the right place to create alchemy in learning and assessment. So let's dive into today's topic and discover how we can turn educational challenges into opportunities for growth and success. Welcome to the Assessment Alchemist. Um, Thank you for joining me. Um, Today, as I am sitting going through, over here I have some gift bags I put together for students that are getting ready to take the first ever digital SAT being given in the United States on this Saturday, and the national test date. The digital PSAT was given in the fall, but this is the first national digital test date. And so I thought, why don't I do a deep dive on the digital SAT? So I don't normally talk about ACT and SAT stuff on here, but this was such a huge change. And I'm going to go through like the structure of the test and kind of do a walkthrough. And I think even if if your students don't take the SAT, or you're not taking it, right? Like if you're looking at professionals looking at taking exams, the type of things that I'm going to be going through and talking about are the things that if you know before you go in to take the test and you've done the practice and you understand the structure, it takes away some of that anxiety, right? It's The unknown contributes to test anxiety. So the more that you can understand and have a plan of attack for before you go into the test, the better you're going to feel. Right. So this is just one example. I would highly recommend taking practice exams before you take especially high stakes exams. But like I said, I'm going to go through and show you specifically the digital SAT. So let's go through everything that you need to know, because there is a dramatic difference between the old pencil and paper SAT and the digital SAT. So I'm going to share my screen, and this is the Blue Book software. So you could go onto the College Board website and download the Blue Book software. Um, Students, possibly if they have Chromebooks through the school, already have the software downloaded. And I'm just going to start. I don't recommend doing the test preview, simply because as you're answering questions, you're never going to know if you were answering them correct or incorrect. So just from experience, I was very frustrated when I went through and did that. So it's worth just starting with the full length practice test. You don't need to take the whole thing, but at least I'm going to go through so you can see what it's about. So I am actually going to select an SAT, and I'm just going to randomly pick one. Okay, two. Um, the college blue books, the Blue Book software actually comes up asking about, I'm just going to start this one over, but about accommodations. Um, I will not be using accommodations, but if you are testing with accommodations, you have the option to put that in there. Okay, so let's start pulling up the practice test. So while this is starting, let me just begin right away with one of the big differences between pencil and paper and the digital is the overall time. Okay, so the old pencil and paper test was about 3.5 hours to take. The digital is about 2.5 hours, and that's for standard time conditions. Okay, so right away, much shorter test. Obviously, you need technology. So Chromebooks, can use iPads, computers. Um, I'll know a lot more after the first one is given this weekend, but it looks like it is going to be, you had to tell beforehand what technology you were bringing with you to the test site, for the actual test. So the um, during the practice, they don't lock your device. When you're taking the actual exam, it will lock down everything on the device, so they will not be able to use anything but the Blue Book software. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And the first thing that pops up here is the reading and writing. So different than the pencil and paper version, reading and writing is broken down. Instead of, it used to be two separate sections, right? They combined, merged reading and writing into one section. So you have one section that's reading and writing, and then one section that's math. We'll get to the math in a little bit. The reading and writing section is broken into two modules. So I'm sure you've heard some about the adaptive testing. So the first module of reading and writing is identical for everybody that takes it. Then, depending on which questions are correct and difficulty level of the questions that get correct in the first module, the second module is different for students based off of how they did on the first module. So that's where the adaptive scoring comes into play. You do get 32 minutes in standard time conditions for 27 questions. It's always going to start with the directions open. Okay, so now let's start a deep dive on the reading and writing section. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. If you're listening to the podcast, I highly recommend going over to the YouTube channel or going to mytutor.com/ episode 11 or podcast episode 11 to actually view the video so that you could see what I'm sharing with my screen because I'm actually going through the software. Okay, so a couple things about the software before I dive into the question types. So this top left corner is always going to tell you where you are in the test. So section 1, module 1, reading and writing. You can reopen the directions, but they're never really going to need to. Next is the clock. You can notice the clock counting down. For students that have anxiety around having that clock countdown right in front of them, you can hide the clock. It will reappear with 5 minutes remaining. It'll turn red and it'll open back up. And at that point, you can't hide it anymore. I'll go into the annotating in just a minute. A couple other things that are available in both sections. You can mark a question for review. You can click this ABC, and then you can actually cross off answer choices as you go through. And you can view where you are in the overall module. You cannot go on to module 2 and then come back to module 1. So once your time is up on module 1, you move to module 2 and you can't go back. So you want to make sure all the questions are answered before you continue on. And then only in the reading and writing section, you have the ability to annotate in the software. And how that works is you actually highlight what you want to annotate. You click the annotate button, and then you can type in whatever you want. I did have a student ask if College Board can see what you're typing in. The answer is no, they cannot. Oh, there we go. And then when you hover over, it'll show you what you annotated. Okay, so there's a couple software related things. Now let's get into the question types. So like I said, reading and writing are now combined. Okay. A couple of things that I think this is amazing. Gone are the long passages in reading with the 10 to 11 questions following it. Okay. So it's going to be a couple of sentences to a paragraph. So it's much shorter. Okay. Altogether, right? You have 52 questions um, between the two sections. So, yeah, that saves some time as you go through. I think I just did my math wrong. 54 questions. I did do it wrong. Uh, so 54 questions between the two sections. Why I got stuck for a second is because there's two sections in each, two questions in each module that are not scored. So it's actually only 50 and not 54 questions that are scored. Those other 4 questions in reading writing, they're using to assess for future test administrations. Okay. So not only did the College Board combine reading and writing, but they've also like grouped question types together. Okay. And within each type of question that they have together, the difficulty goes from easy to hard. Okay. This is so nice. So the first types of questions that you're going to come across on the reading and writing section are these words in context or vocab questions. Okay, so first couple questions are going to be about vocab. Next, and those, like I said, go easy to hard. The next type of questions that you're going to see on reading and writing are about main purpose or structure. Okay, here's function, overall structure. Okay, then you get into main idea and evidence. So the next couple here those are main idea. Here's some evidence supporting researchers' claim. You do have graphs and tables. You can see that even the longest of these is just so much shorter, like so much easier to handle. And then logically completing text. There you go. That was the reading portion. Those questions I just went through were the reading portion of the first module. So compared to the pencil and paper, it's mind-blowing how different it is. The rest of the questions in this module are the writing portion. So we start with conventions of standard English, so grammar type questions. We have a few of those. That's where the punctuation and verb tense and all that fits in. Then we have transition questions. So a couple questions on transition specifically. And then the last type of question that appears is called rhetorical synthesis. This is a new type of question for the digital SAT. I think it's been on AP English tests in the past, but it's new for the digital SAT. Honestly, one of my favorite questions types. It's going to give you a topic and information, kind of like students taken notes. Then it gives you a question that they're asking, and then you need to be able to answer that based off of relevant information from the notes. And that is the last question type. Okay. The number of questions in each of those areas varies a little bit from test to test, but and from section to section. So like there might be a different number of questions on that topic in module 2. But that was it. We went through the whole first module already. When they're done, obviously they're going to stay for that whole 32 minutes. I'm just going to move on so that you can see that the second module is identical to the first. Is just the second module that you get is adaptive. So it was based off of how it was before. Again, starts off with the vocab and context. You can see there I have a couple more vocab questions here than I did before. Now we have the purpose or structure questions. And then we get into main idea and evidence. And then grammar. After grammar, transition questions. There's the transition questions. And then last up, those rhetorical synthesis. Oh, and this section didn't even have any. Okay, so like I said, it depends a little bit. That first module had a lot of rhetorical synthesis. Awesome. And honestly, if I had answered questions on the first one, I would have been given different questions on the second module than the ones that I was given. I hope that makes sense for the reading and writing, because that is all there is to it. All right, now let's move on to math. They will get a 10-minute break with standard time conditions between, oh, here you go, between the reading and writing and math. It actually shows up on the screen like this, and they can't, and honestly, I don't know if they can move on. But I highly recommend getting up, moving around, stretching, taking a break, having a snack, leaving the room, but getting up and walking around. Okay, now let's talk math. All right, biggest difference between the pencil and paper math section and the digital math section is that you get to use your calculator the entire time on the digital test. Not only do you get to use your TI-84 or whatever graphing calculator you have, you also have access to Desmos. So if you click the calculator button, it opens up Desmos within the Blue Book software. Okay, that is huge. And if you are looking for activities to use or like helping students learn how to use Desmos, I actually just put together a whole thing that I put up on Teachers Pay Teachers. Search SAT and Desmos, and you'll see My Tutor Desmos activities up there. But to show there's a lot of things that you could do within Desmos that I don't think a lot of students are aware of. You do have 35 minutes for 22 questions for each of the two modules. In standard time conditions, it is structured just like the reading and writing in that the first module is this identical for everybody, and then the second module is adaptive based off of how you did on the first. The same software things that applied in the first one as far as marking for review and being able to eliminate answer choices is all available here, and hiding the time. I did show you the Desmos already. The other thing is that if you click reference, you do get the reference sheet that actually contains the same formulas and information that was available on the pencil and paper version. So there is that. A couple other things that are different. The word problems aren't quite as wordy. They cut down on how long those were. We do still have, I always call them grid-ins, but the student produced responses are now mixed in to the other questions versus being all at the end of the section. And you can have negative answers now, which you couldn't before. But as you're filling it in, it will stop when, like it won't let you fill in more than a certain number. Just like before, I can't do, if I have 3.5, I can't put it in like this because it would read that as 31 halves. But I could do 3.5 or I could do 7 halves. And let's see. Yeah, so here's a perfect example of a word problem. You can see this is, if you're familiar with the pencil and paper version, this is actually pretty short compared to what you could have on that test. Get to use, like I said, calculator. It goes up through stats, maybe a trig problem, but Algebra 2 and below, just like before, it's not as heavy on geometry as the ACT is. Um, there's a trig one. Um, Lots of quadratics, lots of slope lines, linear algebra. Um, there's a geometry one. Yep, graphing, percentiles, exponential functions. So, like I said, algebra 2, it's heavy on algebra 2. And then 22 questions. When you're all done, again, next. The last module is the same. Another 22 questions, another 35 minutes, and then you're done. So, the test overall, I much prefer the digital version to the pencil and paper SAT. You have a lot more tools at your disposal, and I think the structure of the questions is more realistic and easier for students to understand. That said, I think some students oversimplify it and might be going too quickly on questions. And then obviously there's strategies for taking tests online and practicing and doing all of the things. But I just wanted today's podcast to be about going through the actual what to expect on the digital SAT. So um, I hope going through the software and showing you and talking about the timing of the problems and the types of questions that you're going to see helps give you a little insight into the digital SAT. Please reach out with any questions. My tutor, my the number 2tor.com is the website, and I'm always welcome to feedback and would love to talk. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Good luck to students taking the digital SAT coming up, whether it is this is upcoming weekend for the first one, or a lot of the state tests are coming up in March and April. So students all over the country will be taking digital SAT very soon. So, like I said, hope this information helps and have a wonderful day.